Good morning. Welcome to Unity Spiritual Center. Appreciate you being here. Our topic today is the kingdom. The Father within me, He does the work. And I've been doing some reading, and one of the things that I keep going back to, it amazes me, is the New Testament and the Old Testament actually talks about what we're looking at today, quantum physics. And so what I want to do is go back and look at what Jesus said. Because anybody agree in today's world, in the spiritual nature, we are a Christian organization. We did use the teachings of Christ. So what did Jesus say, and how do we use that context in today's world? And unfortunately, because he was speaking 2,000 plus years ago, a lot of the conversation does not translate into today's conversation. Because it's been, the word corrupted came to me. But anyway, things have been translated and meanings have been given to things. And it's going back and looking and pulling out the words and looking at what he said. And we in Unity believe that we are one. See, that's that. We are one, and the language of being one is love. So what does one mean? What one means is each of us, each of you, each of the 8 billion people in the world are one spirit, one energy, one conversation. And so I've been looking at that, helping myself understand it, and I want to dig into that. And we're looking at John 14:10. Okay, so this says, do not believe that I am with my Father. Do you not believe that I am with my Father and my Father is with me? The words that I speak, I do not speak of myself, but my Father who abides with me does these works. So the idea here is the Father. Now, in the article I did this week, I really got clear and worked with what was happening 2,000 years ago. We think that because we read something that it occurs in our culture. Agreed. Now, the word patriarchal culture is not part of our conversation. As a matter of fact, patriarchal culture is diminishing more and more and more because we're looking at equity between the sexes. So, and women are moving forward. Did anybody agree in today's world? Rightfully so. However, back there, 2,000, 2,200 years ago, it was a patriarchal culture. Now, what that means is that the father was in charge of the family. So the actual structure was a family group. Now, we have some of you in the room that have grandkids, and even grandkids, right? This is yes, this is no. So that is a cultural family. And it goes down, could go down to the third and fourth generation. And that was what the structure was back then. And there was one father, one male in charge of running that family. Now, it's almost like the corporate structure in today's world, that there was the president, then vice presidents, and this all came down. And so the father ran the family. The family included the assets, the houses, the huts, the tents, whatever it was. It included all the cattle, the sheep. All the things that occurred within that extended family came back to the father running it. Now, in today's world, that wouldn't work, agreed. Okay, and some people might have reaction to that. But you can't change history. A fact is a fact is a fact. But that's what Jesus was speaking into and using metaphors to explain the Father within. So, and understand that the Father ran everything. And if you, as a member of that extended family, wanted to do anything, you had to get permission from the Father to do it. Okay? And my understanding is once a week or once every few weeks, he would have a open conversation, so you could make an appointment with the Father, go in and say, explain your deal to the Father, and he could agree or disagree. And if he agreed, he was also expected to help you do your thing. Okay? So if you want to get married, what'd you do? You had to seek permission from the Father, And then if you needed anything to get that done, he was expected to support you with the resources you need to get that done. So I want you to really understand that, because that conversation is very, very important to understand what it means in today's world. So the Father is the head of everything. And if you need anything, the Father is going to get it for you. So you see the context. It's not like it is today. It's if you have to go back to that and say, everything you need, the Father can give you once you ask permission. Everybody get it? So the Father and my Father is with me. So Jesus is saying, the Father within me. Okay, so the Father within him is everything. Right? Anything I need, the Father has it. And when I speak with the Father's word. And then it goes on and says, the words that I speak, I do not speak of myself, but my Father who abides with me does these works. So it's a metaphor for I have the Father within me that runs everything, and everything I speak and everything I do is because of the Father's. So, in other words, it's a lot bigger issue than we take, just a day-to-day kind of thing. Okay? Now, there's more. Okay? In John 14 is a conversation that the disciples were asking Jesus, because Jesus was getting ready. He knew Easter was coming. Okay? He must have had a calendar or something. But anyway, and he knew the crucifixion was going to happen, and they had to go through it. And it was the ultimate trial showing his divinity to be able to overcome death. Anybody agree the biggest fear is death? Okay, yes? Okay, but now you reach a point where it doesn't matter anymore. So overcoming death is a big deal, and he knew this had to occur. So he was having let's call what is it? It's a conversation with his disciples, okay? And they can ask any question they want to. And he has said, when this happens, I am leaving. So the question is, where are you going? Seriously. As a matter of fact, it's in John 14, and we could spend a lot of time reading. I don't like to read. And the idea here is what he's saying is, it's going to work out, guys. Don't worry about it, okay? Because he knew what was occurring in advance. So number one, he is saying in a metaphor that there's a presence within me, okay, that can do anything. And that can do absolutely anything. Okay? Now, he's also saying, if you believe in me, you can do the same things. So, there's one verse I want to read. And that is John 14:12. Okay? And John 14:12, excuse me, I'm eating. I should put my glasses on, right? John 14:12. Okay? It says, truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me shall do the works which I do, and even greater things shall they do. So what does believe in me mean? Okay, that's a question. So he is a master teacher. So what he's saying is, if you believe the words I've been speaking and what I've shown, then you can do the same thing. He also says, and this is, he's saying in 17, even the Spirit of truth. Now, what is the Spirit of truth? Anybody ever heard the word, what is God? What is source? Spirit of truth is that same entity within him and within you and all of us. And even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive. So the world is not ready to hear the words Spirit of truth, which we're discussing right now, by the way. And then it goes on, because it has not seen him and does not know him. But you know him, because you've been introduced to him, the Spirit of truth, which is within. Okay? First, I'm looking. Verse 11, believe that I am with the Father and my Father is with me. So he is saying the Father within, the Spirit of truth, God is within him. Okay? Then he's also saying, and if not, believe because of these works. Okay? Now, I'm saying if you ask even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, and you can receive it because you've already heard it. The problem is, do we believe it? So the idea that we are one is a nice idea that feels good. But the thing to understand is this: Jesus is saying that I and the Father are one, and then he's saying you and I are one. So if we are descendants emotionally, spiritually of Jesus, and Jesus is one with God, and we are all God, then anybody understand that rationale and what he is saying? Okay? So and for me, what's happening is looking at over and over and over again who I really am. And I'm aware that I take it lightly. Right? It's like, yeah, I've heard that before. How many times do you have to tell me, Robert? Okay? That's me talking to me. Okay? So the idea is, who are you? And what have we forgotten that we don't know? And then in verse 7 of chapter 15 it says, if you remain with me in spirit, and my words remain with you. His words. What are the words? The kingdom, Father and I are one. It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And then it says, the Father will remain with you. Whatever you ask shall be done for you. Anybody agree that's a pretty heavy promise? Okay? And do we take it lightly? And what it's doing is showing us a spiritual path. What is being said here is that I and the Father are one. You and the Father are one. You can do the same thing that I did. It says it here. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay? So we take it seriously. And what happens? How come I can't? How come I've got a pain in my right shoulder? How come things, this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen? How come I got rear-ended? Okay? The truth is, evidently, I haven't reached the spiritual level which Jesus ascended to. And he is saying, these things I do, ye shall do in even greater things when you wake up. Now, the when you wake up is my editorial, okay? Mm-hmm. So what is waking up? Well, quantum physics tells us that we control the energies. And the word love, word love is used everywhere in the Bible. So the language of God, language of spirit, the language of spirit within, the language of divinity is love, okay? So, does that mean I can use the word love every day? So I love you? How many times do we say things that aren't loving? Because, see, that's part of what we're learning. Or how many times do I say I love you or use a word that implies love? Okay, so we're right back to the language that we use and the thoughts we hold. So I've been aware this week, my mind wanders. Anybody familiar with wandering minds? Mm-hmm. And this keeps telling me to love. And it's the Father's good pleasure to give me the kingdom and you the kingdom. And how come I ain't got the kingdom on purpose? Okay? Probably because I don't use the word love enough. So I love you. And even in prayer work, I don't know about you, but we bring people in to pray for them. We don't need to ask for changes. We just need to see them in love. Does this make sense? Because even the songs that we were singing is, you're already perfect. You're already a child of God. You're already divinity. You're already one with all that is. Jesus said, you got it made, the Father within do the work. So what do we have to do? Here's the key. Anybody agree? When we look at each other, we see the physical form and all the issues with us. It's easy to do it in special relationships. Anybody familiar with them? That's you and I. And how often do you gossip about somebody, or how often do you say, well, you know, that's the way he is, or that's the way she is? And I'm just trying to look at where I have fallen down. And it's like when I pray for my daughters, do I see them changing, or do I see them already perfect? Because what we pray for is change rather than manifesting the Christ self. At least that's what I do. Okay, so now I'm learning I love you, bring them up. I'm reminded right now of an issue that when we were up in Van Alstyne, we were ministers of the church there. One of the exercises we did, and this came from, I don't remember who it came from, maybe Madeline remembers, but we had people pair off and discuss people they were having trouble with. So an example would be Madeline has an issue with the next door neighbor, and whatever it is. And I have an issue with my first daughter, okay? And every time I look at and I don't like this, but anyway, I look at my daughter, I see the problem that needs to be corrected. So what we agreed to do was, for the next 2 weeks, she was going to hold our first daughter in the light and know and love her. And I was going to take care of the next door neighbor. Everybody got that? In other words, when I get deeply involved in worrying about something else or an accident or whatever it is, I get so involved in it that the ego keeps me, anybody familiar with loops? So, backing off and letting somebody else see that in love change things.
We did a picture too. We usually gave them a picture of the person.
A picture of the person, and we had some amazing things happen. We had a family. The father owned a big farm in Missouri, and there were 3 kids, 3 kids, I think. And they had not talked to each other because when the father died, somebody took over the farm, and the other 2 were left out. Okay? And within 3 weeks, that whole thing, they resolved it. Long-term family squabble. And so what I'm sharing with you is when we can't get out of a negative space with somebody, ask somebody else to do it. And it doesn't take anything. It's just changing what I think and what I see. And in the beginning, seeing somebody in a white halo is a big, big issue. And then the word comes to love. What I think I've learned to do is I love you. When I pray for each of you, I'm not asking anything other than I love you. I love you, I love you. Now, everywhere in this book it talks about love. The language of God is love. And I realize we haven't been using the word love in my conversation with myself, number one. Who's the first person to love? Yourself. Because you're a child of God. Created in the image and likeness of God. So, do I have to learn to love myself? Yeah. First one. Then, the closest person to me, my husband or my wife or my daughters. So we all go through that process. And then we attempt to see them, pray for them by changing them. The Christ in them knows it was perfect. So it's really manifesting the Christ and praying and loving what you see. Because you're already perfect and complete where you are right now, because you are one with God. Yes?
So it's really interesting because you talked about Jesus knew of the crucifixion. And we know that he was persecuted. We know things happened to him, right? He didn't have this really easy, simple life here on earth. And I think that's an example of the rare endings that, you know, have been occurring, and there's no promise that we're gonna have an easy, stress-free life. That's just not, you know,
We
Jesus'
could or we could not, huh?
But how we show up, how we view things that happen to us, and remembering the truth of who we are and the truth of who somebody else is. And I see that's what you're saying, is that even though you may feel like you have an issue or an opportunity with someone, seeing and holding the Christ-conscious light can just change this. I love how you're talking about how it can change it in just an instance. But I think that we forget that even Jesus had, you know, he had things in his life
No
that
question
were
about
not easy.
That's one of the reasons he went out and he, as far as we know, he spent 40 days in a retreat in the desert to get his thinking straight. And see, when it says he went up to the mountain, that's a metaphysical conversation, because there were mountains around there, but when you take your consciousness up to the mountain, you're taking it from the body up to the Christ self. So it's a metaphor for he went into prayer, he went into meditation. Okay, now that's my context, that's what I understand. Okay? Very, very interesting
I have
concept.
something.
Yes.
When you said something this morning, the idea is we're all one. So,
Yeah, but we don't,
okay.
yes.
So working on, okay, in this room, we are all one.
Yes.
In this country, we are all one.
Yes.
And then when you said 8 billion people, we are one, it just went, whew. I mean, that's just like, I couldn't wrap my head around that.
It's a consciousness.
8 billion people, and we're all one. That's,
No matter what they look like, no matter who they are, no matter what they're doing.
it's,
And says we're children of God, created in the image and after likeness. And unfortunately, we've been given choice. In other words, we can't be robots that are already programmed to do whatever. We have free choice as a child of God. So the ego has taken over our conversation, and the original process is still there. You're still a child of God, and we've forgotten it. And what I'm aware of is the ego is so nice and says, okay, well, you deserve that. Go ahead and do that, whatever that is. Anybody familiar with pleasure? I don't need to go any further than that. So it has all these issues. Anybody notice when we were in meditation? She was doing a beautiful job, and all of a sudden the sirens outside. Yes?
yeah.
Okay? You were being distracted because you were doing so well, in my opinion. Okay? Anybody ever notice that things come up when you decide to do something? Anybody ever notice the doubt that comes up when you say, okay, I'm going to do this? Oh my God, that might not work. And see, the truth is, you wouldn't be thinking about it if it wasn't to be done. Now, you do have to pray on it, make sure it's as blessed all the divine thing. But we're always presented. Anybody understand that, like, we pray for something, like it's time to do this, and all of a sudden something comes up that might be different, but you got your answer? And if you do this, it all works out, or if you go this way, so we reach those points. They're called tipping points, and all of a sudden, boom, here we are. But that's all the process of the Christ self working within us, and it's up to us to love ourselves and understand it. Anybody else? What happens to me is I see it, and I find things. By the way, all of a sudden I was told to look at John 14:10. There's also another verse in here, and I'm going to get that. Matthew, you ready? Matthew, where'd it go? I'm going to use this one way or another. Matthew 16:24. Okay, and he answered, saying to them, I am not sent except to the sheep which went astray from the house of Israel. So he was sent here for us that went astray. Does anybody agree? I don't live a perfect life. I have to agree that. Anybody else want to agree that? So, kingdom of heaven is within. It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. We are the energy of God. And it's, you know, and if you go into some of the other religions, anybody agree, the Buddhists, that they work on that? The Hindu and a lot of the other religions, it's a different conversation. Like people say, well, they worship different gods. Well, no, all they do is worship different aspects of God that we talk about. Anybody agree the 12 powers are part of our conversation, which is demonstrated in some of the other religions by aspects of God. Okay, so I'm not going to go any further. Anybody else want to add? No questions? Huh, okay. Blessings, I'm done. I have to